Hi, this is Federico, and this video is a quick explanation about how to change the fill color and the stroke color in components. Let me explain. So I'm going to create a quick component as an example. So I'm going to grab a rectangle and let's place a circle on top of it to create a sort of door-like shape. And I'm going to join them with the Boolean union. And on this one, I'm going to add a red stroke. So I'm going to call my component the door. Now, in a separate component, I'm going to drag instances of my door component. So let's do a couple, 3 or so. So as you can see, the instances here have a red stroke. But I can always sort of override that red stroke. So let's try and drag another one and change the stroke to, say, this cyan. And then I can even drag another one and then give it a fill. So in this case, I can see that I added the stroke and the fill because on the inspector here, there is a little icon that shows me that. So this one shows me the fill on this shape, and this one shows me the stroke on this shape. But I can always go back and edit the component itself. And I can do that in 2 different ways. So the first way is to click on the component here on the left-hand side panel, and then I can make changes here. So I can say, for example, change the stroke color to blue. And now this should have changed all of the instances that I used. So you can see that all of the top ones changed to blue, but this one, because I had sort of added the stroke on it, didn't change to blue. And this one still changed to blue, but I retained the fill. But there is a second way to edit the properties of a component. So let's kind of go back and reset these to red. But now here where I have all the instances, I can actually edit the component itself sort of in context. So I can double click into any of these. So if I double click here, you'll see that I entered this focus mode, and that's signaled because there is a sort of spotlight on top of the thing that I'm editing. And I can also tell that I'm editing the component because here on the inspector, it sort of opened up. So here, if I click on it and I change the stroke, let's try green now, you'll see how all of the instances that didn't have one assigned to them are green now. So in this case, I did exactly the same as editing in the component, except I did it in context. Something to be aware of when you apply a fill or a stroke to a component is that it will affect all the shapes in that component. As an example, I'm going to delete all of these. I'm going to go back to my door component, and let's go back to a sort of red stroke, because that might be a cut, but I'm going to give this one a fill. Let's say we want a sort of light on top of my door. So I'm just going to grab a circle, make it a little small, and then place it right on top. And let's give that circle a yellow fill, like so. So now my component has 2 shapes, one with a yellow fill and one with a gray fill. So if I go to a separate component and I drag instances of those should have the yellow and gray fill. But if I apply a fill to the instance of the component, like in this case, you'll see that it will apply to both shapes. So this kind of overrides every color inside of that component. And just as an example, again, if I want to edit the component itself, you'll see how it affects all the instances. I'm going to do it in context again. So I double click here. And if I change the door fill to something different, let's make it pink, you'll see how all the ones that didn't have anything applied on the inspector, like this one or this one, changed to pink. So hopefully that clarifies that sometimes you're changing things that will affect all of the kind of new instances of the component that you drag, and sometimes you can sort of override or apply things on top of the existing things that the component has. I think it's also worth showing you that sometimes that spotlight effect also appears when you're editing groups. Let me create just a new project to show you that example. So I'm going to create a simple group that is going to be very similar to the door I created before. So I can always select a few shapes and then right click and group them. So in this case, they just now behave like a single thing that I can move around or scale or apply any operation. And when you want to edit things inside of the group, you can also do it by double clicking into it like these. And now I can say move the circle around. And to exit the group, I can click outside of the canvas. And now it's sort of group again. The behavior is very similar to when you apply any other modifier. So for example, if I have a similar shape here with a rectangle and a circle, you'll see that in the inspector, they appear just as two shapes. But if I apply a modifier like the Boolean union, you'll see now that those shapes belong to a group. The modifier creates a group to which the union gets applied. And if I want to edit that group, I can also double click and I enter the focus mode where I'm editing things inside of the group. So if I move this circle now, you'll see that I selected only the circle. I can see it in the inspector. And if I move it up a tiny bit, and then I click out of it by clicking outside of the canvas, I now edited that those two shapes that had the Boolean union. So it's a little similar to editing components, but components have sort of more magic happening to them. So I hope this clarifies some things, and thank you for asking the question, and thank you for watching. Bye.